Sometimes things happen that just seem unexplainable or otherworldly, and that is what we are here to talk about today. From encounters with the paranormal and sightings of apparitions, all the way to UFO sightings and potential alien abductions, to some things that simply just cannot even be explained. What is up, Top 10 fan? Welcome back. I am your host today, Olivia Kosolofski, and today we are diving into the top 10 real otherworldly experiences that left people traumatized. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Audrey and Debbie. Audrey and Debbie are twin sisters who have explained how an encounter with aliens at a young age shaped their lives. Audrey said, quote, "I was probably about 5 years old or so, and a bright blue light would come into the room and the door would open, and there would be like a foggy kind of misty blue light just shining through the whole house, and these two figures would come in. There would be a tall one, they had black capes, but they were bald and had big eyes." The twins said that while these experiences started when they were young, they carried on into adulthood, and they've even explained that they've been abducted by aliens onto the same spaceship, which they realized when they compared stories later. Debbie once explained an encounter she remembers, and she said, quote, "I remember one time being on a spaceship and standing there on the ship, and the floor and the walls disappeared and I was staring down at the earth." In our number 9 spot today we have Todd. Todd is someone who unfortunately has had repeated otherworldly experiences, and his most recent is said to be happening every single night. It starts off as he's laying in bed trying to fall asleep, and suddenly he'll begin feeling some pawing at the end of his bed, like a cat does before it jumps on a piece of furniture. After the pawing, he then feels the cat jump onto the bed, and he feels it walk around for a little bit. This isn't really otherworldly, so you might be wondering why this piece of information is important, but here's the thing. Todd doesn't have a cat, or any pet, and this is happening every single night. Todd tried to replace his entire bed, headboard, and mattress, but all this did was change the timing of these strange occurrences from right as he's falling asleep to 3 a.m. He said one time it even came up behind him, and at that moment it felt like a human body that was laying down next to him. Todd called that experience a little unnerving, but I think the correct words he was looking for would be utterly terrifying. I guess Todd's just a little braver than I am. In our number 8 spot today we have Amber. Amber is a person who experienced what it was like to live in a haunted home. As a teenager, she dabbled in witchcraft and the occult because she was curious about that world and wanted to know if it was just a bunch of made up stuff or if magic and the paranormal really did exist. The reason she ended up quitting these sorts of things is because of one night when she had a horrifying and vivid nightmare where she was being grabbed by demons. When she snapped out of the dream, there was a woman dressed in all white, standing at the foot of her bed, smiling evilly at her. In the end, they had to have mediums come into the home to try and sort things out, and luckily it did get better, but not before it got worse. Amber explained things going on in the home like animals passing away inexplicably, other kids in the house were seeing ghosts, and everyone was so scared that they all slept in the same room together. I am very glad Amber got the heck out of that house because that sounds like some stuff that could be made into a horror movie. In our number 7 spot today we have Louis-Philippe. Louis explained that he has had 3 separate UFO incidents, but it's the final one that really stuck with him. He explained that he was far north near a mountain range in Quebec here in Canada, and he was with one of his employees. It was a rainy night and they were driving around 11:30 p.m. when they began to see flashing lights. Louis pulled over and went to investigate, but this is when his employee that he was with began crying uncontrollably and was seemingly terrified. The employee was begging for him to get back in the car and drive away from this unbelievably bright light that was in the mountain forest. He explained that the light flashed for about 10 seconds and then it was solid. There was no sound, and like I explained before, this was all taking place at 11:30 p.m., but the light was so bright it appeared to be like daylight outside around them for about half a mile. Louis wanted to investigate further, but because of how distraught this other person was, he got back in the car and drove away. I really wonder what exactly that was. In our number 6 spot today we have Dylan. This story took place when Dylan was 11 years old and he was doing some homework at the office desk at his dad's place while his dad was watching the news behind him. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Dylan begins sprinting as fast as he can down the hallway in complete fear, and he dashed into the kitchen where he hid under the table. His dad didn't say anything at all. There wasn't anything he could understand that triggered this response. It just happened. Then he hears, "All right, Dylan, it's time to head to bed," and he realizes it's his dad's voice. He then looks at the time on the microwave and realizes he's been under the table for 2 hours. Why? Where did the time go? What happened? At this point, he snapped out of it, and ever since that day, he hasn't been able to fully explain what happened to him. In our number 5 spot today, we have Devin. This story comes from a guy who loves cars, but had a weird moment about 15 years ago that he just couldn't get off of his mind. When he was in his early 20s, he loved to speed in cars and wanted to go fast. His friend had a car that he really wanted to drive, and one day it turned out to be his lucky day, and his friend finally gave in. He hopped in the driver's seat with his friend who owned the car in the passenger seat and another buddy in the back, and off they went. They went to an empty freeway around 3 a.m. and put the pedal to the metal. Once they hit around 135 miles per hour, they began to see a bunch of semi-trucks. There were 3 basically driving side by side, taking up all 3 of the lanes, and certainly not going as fast as 135 miles per hour. He thought to himself that there was an on-ramp coming up and that he could just use that as some extra room to pass, but unfortunately, as he approached the on-ramp, another semi was entering the freeway and occupying that 4th lane. With all 4 semis lined up, he was approaching too fast with no time to brake, so he closed his eyes and prepared for the worst. But then just nothing happened. He opened his eyes and the other guys in the car were just as confused as he was. Somehow they were now all in front of the semis, but there was literally no room for them to have passed by. This was the end of his speeding career, as he was super spooked as to what just happened, and that's it. This was the end of his speeding career though, as he was super spooked as to what possibly could have just happened. In our number 4 spot today, we have Alex. This story takes place on a Saturday morning as Alex was just getting ready to crush some Saturday morning cartoons. You know, the classics. He was just sitting in the middle of the living room, no one else was awake yet, and then he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around and saw it was his aunt, which he thought was kind of strange, but he obviously began having a conversation with her. She was happy and nice, so it didn't really scare him aside from that initial shock of someone placing a hand on his shoulder. During this conversation with his aunt, Alex's mom walked into the living room, and he quickly looked over at her when she asked who he was talking to. Alex replied and said his aunt and began describing which one, and this is when his mom began to cry. Alex didn't know this yet, but this aunt had actually passed away just a few days before this encounter. I wonder if this experience was his aunt's ghost coming to visit him to let him know that she would be okay. In our number 3 spot today, we have Terrell. Terrell is a former US Navy Marine, and he has a story about his encounter with extraterrestrials that all started with a UFO sighting. He explained that one night he saw some sort of an orb of light which he started to capture on his cell phone. He described it like a big ball of light that wasn't moving, and he also said that it was solid white, but that there was another ball of light directly across the street, and that one was about 300 feet off the ground, and it was changing colors rapidly. The real trouble here though came after Terrell posted this video he had taken of the UFO to Facebook. He explained, quote, "I woke up from the nap by the sound of someone trying to enter my apartment, and I said, 'Who is it?' There was no answer. Still, just, you know, you could see the doorknob moving and like a scratching at the door, and I keep a firearm. It was on my table, and my thought was to get up and check. I was in complete paralysis. The only things I could move were my eyes, and I heard a voice through the door saying, 'You don't need that weapon. We won't harm.'" After this, Terrell explained that he began to miss time. During 2 nights, he missed a total of 4 hours, and it wasn't because he was sleeping. I don't know, that sounds pretty freaky to me. In our number 2 spot today, we have Bruce. One day, Bruce gets a call from his neighbors asking him if he can help them move a mattress upstairs. He had a really great relationship with his neighbors, so he was of course willing to help. When he got there, they got the mattress all moved, and the neighbors asked him if he wouldn't mind helping with one more armoire as well. No problem, he thought, as he began to help them move that one up the stairs as well. This is when things went awry. There were 11 stairs at the front. He was on the lower end carrying sharing the armoire, and about 6 steps up, his friend at the top lost a handle on the armoire, and the whole thing comes crashing down on him since he was at the bottom. He of course loses his balance and falls back towards the pavement, and this is when he actually remembers dying from the fall. The next thing he remembers though is waking up in his dining room with his phone ringing and his wife asking him if he's gonna answer the phone. He's obviously super freaked out because he literally just remembers dying 2 seconds ago, but now somehow he's here. When he answers the phone, it's his neighbor asking him if he can help him move a mattress up the stairs. He surprisingly goes over again to help, and when he gets there, he says he can help with the mattress, but not the armoire. His neighbor is shocked because he didn't know how he could have possibly known about the armoire. Did this guy have some sort of premonition, or did his death in one reality bring him into a different reality where he gets a do-over? I don't know, but I hope he's really taking advantage of this second chance. In our number 1 spot today we have Kim. This story starts off when Kim and her little brother were the only 2 at home. They were just playing and hanging out and being kids, and everything was fine. Kim explained that in this house they would have strange experiences like the fire alarm randomly going off at 2 a.m. or just the eerie feeling like someone was watching you, but on this particular day everything was just going fine. They were playing in Kim's room, which has one of those standing fans in it, but then they got thirsty and went to the kitchen to get a drink. It took about 5 minutes for them to return to Kim's room from the kitchen, and when they came back they had quite the surprise waiting for them. Neatly on Kim's bed laid the fan, but it had all been pulled apart. Who had done this? Why? Where did they go? Kim gave no follow-up information to this story, so I have no idea what happened next, or if she was ever able to sleep again. I know I wouldn't be able to, at least not while I'm in that house, that's for sure. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video today, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more. I have been your host today, Olivia Kosolofski, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!